In this session, we'll be exploring some of the building blocks necessary to understand how Pro Tools works. If you're new to Pro Tools, we recommend that you take a moment to learn these. Even if you're an experienced Virtual Studio user, some of these ideas have meanings unique to the Pro Tools environment that you'd benefit from understanding. A Pro Tools file is called a session. This file is what stores your mix, references external audio files, region definitions, automation track names, etc. It doesn't actually contain the audio files that you recorded. These are stored in a folder called Audio Files. Pro Tools creates this folder automatically for you in every session. A Pro Tools session file has the extension .ptf, Pro Tools file. The file itself does contain all the MIDI data that you recorded. For these reasons, session files are pretty small, even though your audio files can be huge. For example, mine here is 60 kilobytes, but my audio files folder is a lot bigger. It's 106 megabytes, and I've only got 3 tracks here. If you need to share your files with someone else, you need to copy not only the session file, but all the other folders that Pro Tools has created for you. And again, for this reason, it's always a good idea to put each of your projects in its own folder, because Pro Tools does create all of these extra folders. It's easy to get confused. You may record an audio or MIDI track in starts and stops. You may import files, add a guitar riff or drum loop here or there. Each of these musical events is called a region. You might stretch out or edit or process some of your original takes. This manipulation creates new regions. Both audio and MIDI regions appear in a region list on the right-hand side of the Pro Tools Edit window. Editing your tracks also creates new regions. For example, if I cut a track into 2 parts, 2 separate regions would be created in my regions list. But I haven't made any changes to the source audio file, and that'll show up also in the region list. They appear here in bold type. In addition to cutting up regions, you can group them together and make many other edits. You use the region menu, or you can use the region local menu. You can drag regions out onto tracks. Let's undo that. These files in the region menu, these graphical representations of my tracks, the track names in the track list here, these are only pointers to external files or portions of external files. That's why you can reorganize, cut and paste, duplicate, or play them back seamlessly no matter how you've organized them. Despite all of your chopping and shuffling, the original audio file isn't changed. This is one of the beauties of digital recording. It's a non-linear, non-destructive environment because no original file is touched by the changes you make unless you specify it so, and you can also reorganize those original takes without affecting them. Pro Tools manages this feat by what's called the Dae Buffer, or the DigiDesign Audio Engine Buffer. The Dae is an operating system extension for real-time digital audio processing. It operates in the background when you launch Pro Tools. It mediates between Pro Tools and your audio hardware so that everything goes in and gets played back at the right time. You might need to increase the size of the Dae buffer if your session is really big or if your hardware seems pretty slow. I've got mine set at 512 samples, which is by no means a lot, but it's not the lowest setting either. Let's cancel out of that. Now let's take a minute to talk about tracks. Let's close the region list. We click on this double chevron. It'll give us a little more room. A track is where you string your audio regions together. Each horizontal bar in the edit window is a track. I've color-coded my tracks. I've got 5, 6, 7, 8 tracks. My 8 tracks are listed here in the tracks list. One of these tracks happens to be a metronome click track. Each track also has its own name, which you can change by double-clicking on the name bar. In the mix window, tracks are seen as vertical channel strips. Let's go back to the edit window. Pro Tools works with both audio and MIDI tracks. Here's a sample MIDI track. Pro Tools also offers additional types of tracks: aux inputs, master faders, and instrument tracks. We'll be exploring each of these tracks later on in this course. Auxiliary input tracks and master fader tracks aren't for audio regions. Auxiliary inputs are for virtual tracks that let you optimize the routing of your signal within Pro Tools. For example, here I've got an aux-in track that helps me monitor the signal of my MIDI track so that I can hear it while I'm playing. I could also do this with an instrument track. It's like a MIDI track with an audio monitoring function. A master fader track is used to monitor your output. In addition to importing audio, you can also import movies into Pro Tools. If you do, then you will create what's called a movie track. Each track has its own playlist. Click on these selector arrows to open up the track's playlists. Here I've got 3 different playlists. Playlist is like one version of a track. It's how you've strung together your audio or MIDI regions. The graphic representation of your waveforms is actually a graphic representation of your track's playlist because only one audio file can play at a time. And obviously, this is pretty useful for experimentation. Use the playlist selector to switch between the versions of your track. Now let's talk about groups. In the left panel of my edit window, I see a list of my groups. Right now I don't have any, but let's go ahead and create one. I'm going to select the tracks that I want to group together and then click Track, Group. We can choose to group these tracks in the Edit and Mix windows or both. Let's click OK. And now my new group appears in the Groups list on the left. I can edit the groups with the local menu, can choose to show groups that are in the Edit window or groups that are in the Mix window or all groups. As well, I can suspend all groups, modify them, etc. Okay, let's deselect these tracks by clicking outside of them. And now what? Click on this double chevron to close the Groups and Tracks list. Click it again to open. And this concludes our tutorial on basic navigation within Pro Tools.